Jane Wyman, born Sarah Jane Mayfield, January 5, 1917, September 10, 2007, was an American actress, singer, dancer and philanthropist whose career spanned 7 decades. She was also the first wife of actor Ronald Reagan, the 40th President of the United States. They married in 1940 and divorced in 1949. Wyman's professional career began at age 16 in 1932 when she signed with Warner Brothers. Wyman followed common practice at the time when she added 3 years to her age. A popular contract player, she frequently played the leading lady, her roles including starring alongside William Hopper in Public Wedding, 1937, Ronald Reagan and Eddie Albert in Brother Rat, 1938, and its sequel Brother Rat and a Baby, 1940, Dennis Morgan in Bad Men of Missouri, 1941, Marlene Dietrich in Stage Fright, 1950, and Sterling Hayden in So Big, 1953. She was also featured opposite Rock Hudson in Magnificent Obsession, 1954, and All That Heaven Allows, 1955, both directed by Douglas Sirk. She received an Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Johnny Belinda, 1948, and was a 3-time winner of a Golden Globe. She achieved continuing success in the television soap opera Falcon Crest, 1981 to 1990, in which Wyman played the lead role of villainous matriarch Angela Channing. Early life. Jane Wyman was born Sarah Jane Mayfield on January 5, 1917 in St. Joseph, Missouri, to Gladys Hope, née Christian, 1895 to 1960, and Manning Jeffers Mayfield, 1895 to 1922. Her father was a meal company laborer and her mother was a doctor's stenographer and office assistant. Wyman was the only child of this union and had no biological siblings, despite some erroneous bios saying she was the youngest of 3 children. This may be in reference to her foster parents' children. Wyman's biological parents were married in March 1916 in Jackson County, Missouri, and Wyman was born in January 1917. The 1920 census showed her to be the only child from the marriage, and aged 3 years old on January 15, 1920. The Mayfields divorced the following year. For many years, Wyman's birth date was widely reported to be January 4, 1914, but research by biographers and genealogists indicated that she was actually born 3 years later. The most likely reason for the 1914 year of birth is that she added to her age in order to gain employment doing odd jobs and working as an actress, even though she was still a minor. She may have moved her birthday back by 1 day to January 4 so as to share the same birthday as her daughter, Maureen, January 4, 1941, August 8, 2001. The 1920 census, though, has her at 3 and living in Philadelphia. After Wyman's death, a release posted on her official website confirmed these details. Wyman's birthplace in St. Joseph, Missouri. In October 1921, her mother filed for divorce, and her father died unexpectedly the following year at age 27. After her father's death, her mother moved to Cleveland, Ohio, leaving her to be reared by foster parents, Emma and Richard D. Fuchs, 1862 to 1928, the chief of detectives in St. Joseph. She took their surname unofficially, including in her school records and on her first marriage certificate. Her unsettled family life resulted in few pleasurable memories. Wyman later said, "I was raised with such strict discipline that it was years before I could reason myself out of the bitterness I brought from my childhood." In 1928, aged 11, she moved to Southern California with her foster mother. In 1930, the two moved back to Missouri, where Sarah Jane attended Lafayette High School in St. Joseph. That same year, she began a radio singing career, calling herself Jane Durrell and adding years to her birth date to work legally, as she would have been underaged. Career. 18-year-old Jane Wyman on the Beach, 1935. After dropping out of Lafayette in 1932 at age 15, she returned to Hollywood, taking on odd jobs as a manicurist and a switchboard operator, before obtaining small parts in such films as The Kid from Spain, My Man Godfrey, 1936, and Cain and Mabel, 1936. She signed a contract with Warner Brothers in 1936. By the time she starred in Public Wedding in 1937, she was already divorced from first husband Ernest Wyman. However, she would retain use of his surname for the remainder of her career. Recognition and acclaim. In 1939, Wyman starred in Torchy Plays with Dynamite. In 1941, she appeared in You're in the Army Now, in which Regis Toomey and she had the longest screen kiss in cinema history, 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Wyman finally gained critical notice in the film noir The Lost Weekend, 1945. She was nominated for the 1946 Academy Award for Best Actress for The Yearling, 1946, and won 2 years later for her role as a deaf-mute rape victim in Johnny Belinda, 1948. She was the first person in the sound era to win an acting Oscar without speaking a line of dialogue. In an amusing acceptance speech, perhaps poking fun at some of her long-winded counterparts, Wyman took her statue and said only, "I accept this, very gratefully, for keeping my mouth shut once. I think I'll do it again." The Oscar win gave her the ability to choose higher-profile roles, although she still showed a liking for musical comedy. She worked with such directors as Alfred Hitchcock on Stage Fright, 1950, Frank Capra on Here Comes the Groom, 1951, and Michael Curtiz on The Story of Will Rogers, 1952. She starred in The Glass Menagerie, 1950, Just for You, 1952, Let's Do It Again, 1953, The Blue Veil, 1951, another Oscar nomination, the remake of Edna Ferber's So Big, 1953, Magnificent Obsession, 1954, Oscar nomination, Lucy Gallant, 1955, All That Heaven Allows, 1955, and Miracle in the Rain, 1956. She replaced the ailing Gene Tierney in Holiday for Lovers, 1959, and next appeared in Pollyanna, 1960, Bon Voyage, 1962, and her final big screen movie, How to Commit Marriage, 1969. Television. Her first guest starring television role was on a 1955 episode of General Electric Theater, a show hosted by her former husband Ronald Reagan. This appearance led to roles on Summer Playhouse, Lux Playhouse, Westinghouse Tesla Playhouse, Checkmate, The Investigators, and Wagon Train. She guest starred in 1959 on The Ford Show, starring Tennessee Ernie Ford on NBC. She was hostess of the Bell Telephone Hour and Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theater. She had telling roles in both The Sixth Sense and Insight, among other programs. Jane Wyman presents the Fireside Theater, for which she was nominated for an Emmy Award in 1957. The ratings steadily declined, however, and the show ended after 3 seasons. She was later cast in 2 unsold pilots during the 1960s and 1970s. After those pilots were not picked up, Wyman went into semi-retirement and remained there for most of the 1970s, although she did make guest appearances on Charlie's Angels and The Love Boat. Falcon Crest. In the spring of 1981, a few months after her ex-husband became the president, Wyman's career enjoyed a resurgence when she was cast as the scheming Californian vintner and matriarch Angela Channing in The Vintage Years, which was retooled as the primetime soap opera Falcon Crest. The series, which ran from December 1981 to May 1990, was created by Earl Hamner, who had created The Waltons a decade earlier. Also starring on the show was an already established character actress, Susan Sullivan, as Angela's niece-in-law, Maggie Guy Auberty, and the relatively unknown actor Lorenzo Lamas as Angela's irresponsible grandson, Lance Compson. The on- and off-screen chemistry between Wyman and Lamas helped fuel the series' success. In its first season, Falcon Crest was a ratings hit, behind other 1980s prime-time soap operas, such as Dallas and Knots Landing, but initially a head of rival dynasty. Cesar Romero appeared from 1985 to 1987 on Falcon Crest as the romantic interest of Angela Channing. For her role as Angela Channing, Wyman was nominated for a Soap Opera Digest Award 5 times, for Outstanding Actress in a Leading Role and for Outstanding Villainess, Primetime Serial, and was also nominated for a Golden Globe Award in 1983 and 1984. Her 1984 Golden Globe nomination resulted in a win for Wyman, who took home the award for Best Performance by an Actress in a TV Series. Later in the show's run, Wyman suffered several health problems. In 1986, she had abdominal surgery which caused her to miss 2 episodes. Her character simply disappeared under mysterious circumstances. In 1988, she missed another episode due to ill health and was told by her doctors to avoid work. However, she wanted to continue working, and she completed the rest of the 1988 to 1989 season while her health continued to deteriorate. Months later in 1989, Wyman collapsed on the set and was hospitalized due to problems with diabetes and a liver ailment. Her doctors told her that she should end her acting career. Wyman was absent for most of the 9th and final season of Falcon Crest in 1989 to 1990. Her character was written out of the series by making her comatose in a hospital bed following an attempted murder. Against her doctor's advice, she returned for the final 3 episodes in 1990, even writing a soliloquy for the series finale. Wyman ultimately appeared in almost every episode until the beginning of the 9th and final season, for a total of 208 of the show's 227 episodes. After Falcon Crest, Wyman acted only once more, playing Jane Seymour's screen mother in a 1993 episode of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Following this, she retired from acting permanently. Wyman had starred in 83 movies and 2 successful TV series, and was nominated for an Academy Award 4 times, winning once. Personal life. Marriages. Wyman married 5 times and had 4 husbands. Ernest Wyman. Wyman married salesman Ernest Eugene Wyman, 1906 to 1970, in Los Angeles, California on April 8, 1933. Wyman recorded her name as Jane Fuchs on the wedding certificate. She also listed foster parents Emma and Richard Fuchs as her parents. In keeping with the tendency of making herself older than she really was, she gave her age as 19 on the document. Truthfully, she had turned 16 just 3 months prior. The couple would divorce after 2 years. Wyman kept her first husband's surname professionally for the remainder of her life. Myron Futterman. Wyman married Myron Martin Futterman, 1900 to 1965, a dress manufacturer, in New Orleans on June 29, 1937. As Wyman wanted children but Futterman did not, they separated after only 3 months of marriage and divorced on December 5, 1938. Ronald Reagan. 25-year-old Wyman with husband and fellow actor, Ronald Reagan, at the premiere of Tales of Manhattan in Los Angeles, August 1942. This was almost 2 years after the birth of their daughter, Maureen. 31-year-old Army Air Force 2nd Lieutenant Reagan was assigned to Culver City's 1st Motion Picture Unit, which was some 3 months after his voluntary transfer from the Army Cavalry, and 5 years after having been commissioned from the enlisted ranks of the U.S. Army Reserve in Iowa. Wyman was already a 10-year Hollywood veteran. Wyman with 3-year-old Maureen Reagan, 1944. In 1938, Wyman co-starred with Ronald Reagan in Brother Rat, 1938, and its sequel Brother Rat and a Baby, 1940. They were engaged at the Chicago Theater, and married on January 26, 1940, at the Weekirk Heather Church, Glendale, California. She and Reagan had 3 children, Maureen Elizabeth Reagan, 1941 to 2001, their adopted son Michael Edward Reagan, born March 18, 1945, and Christine Reagan, born prematurely on June 26, 1947, and died later the same day. This event irreparably tarnished their marriage. Wyman, who was a registered Republican, stated that their breakup was due to a difference in politics. Ronald Reagan was still a Democrat at the time. She filed for divorce in 1948. The divorce was finalized in 1949. In 1981, Ronald Reagan became the first person to assume the nation's highest office as a divorced man. This made Wyman the first former wife of a United States president who was still living at the time that her former husband became president. Although she remained silent during Reagan's political career, she told a newspaper interviewer in 1968 that this was not because she was bitter or because she did not agree with him politically. Frederick Karger. Following her divorce from Reagan, Wyman married German-American Hollywood music director and composer Frederick M. Fred Karger, 1916–1979, on November 1, 1952, at El Montecito Presbyterian Church, Santa Barbara. They separated on November 7, 1954, and were granted an interlocutory divorce decree on December 7, 1954. The divorce was finalized on December 30, 1955. They remarried on March 11, 1961, and Karger divorced her again on March 9, 1965. According to the New York Times report of the divorce, the band later charged that the actress had walked out on him. Wyman had a step